Hey, hello, how are you? Hope you're having a fantastic day. I had a fantastic trip to Mobile, Alabama to go see the USS Alabama. A fantastic trip, really enjoyed it, and let's get into the video. Here we go. Did you know that there has been more than one USS Alabama battleship? 4 prior to this World War II era battleship. Those of the wavy past since have disappeared, such as the Illinois-class pre-dreadnought type battleship USS Alabama, battleship number 8. This is how it appeared at around 1904. The newer World War II battleship BB-60 served both the Atlantic and Pacific campaigns from 1942 to 1945 and is fondly nicknamed the Lucky A. Well, because she emerged from World War II unscathed from the viciousness of all of her battles. Now, this great battleship is saved for all of us to see and experience. And it is an experience, I promise. Visiting the USS Alabama was a very fun experience for multiple reasons. First, there is the obvious hugeness of the ship that is simply amazing. Consider all of the machines, plumbing, wiring, engines, various types of cargo, storage systems, firepower, and on and on and on. This thing is 700 feet or almost 700 feet. It is a monster packed full of all kinds of stuff. Secondly, the battleship is multiple museums all in one. Museums dedicated to World War II, other ships of the war, and the crews of all of these ships. Museums pertaining to everyday life, barbers, firefighters, clothing, doctors, dentists, meal preparation, dining, and daily living conditions. Thirdly, a museum of early mid-1900s technology, such as radars, large caliber guns, aiming and firing systems, as well as ammo control loading systems, communications, and Lord knows what else. And if you really need another reason, fourthly, it houses memorials to the brave crews of all of these ships. Yes, the USS Alabama is a floating naval museum of multiple aspects. The whole park is just packed with great variety. While I could repeat what virtually every other video will tell you, I want to encourage you to just visit other USS Alabama videos related to its history and the history of the battleships in general. I do not intend on overly repeating what is already available, although I'm sure I will repeat a lot of the information already. In this video, I want to help you get more acclimated to the experience of the USS Alabama. That way you get your biggest bang for the buck. I want you to know what you're looking at to begin with, and with some fun, of course, as well. I have a very long list of topics that I want to go through in this video, beginning with the museum's mission, reviews, cautions, location maps, hours and fees, best visiting time, time needed to actually go through at least the Alabama and a little bit more than that, donations, what the self-guided tour is like, walking, its expanse, the 16-inch guns, 5-inch guns, aiming system, control rooms, support rooms, living conditions, the memorial rooms, tiny bit on the submarine planes and armor and artillery that are at the park as well. So I hope you enjoy this. Let's get into it further. I really think for you to enjoy the park, you should first know the mission statement of the USS Alabama State Memorial Park. The mission of the park, well, was comprised in 1963. The mission is to, quote unquote, establish, operate, and maintain a state memorial park to honor the Alabamians who participated so valiantly in all armed conflicts of the United States, ellipse, and as a permanent public memorial to educate the public on the contributions and sacrifices of the veterans of all branches of the United States Armed Services in all conflicts. Very important statement there indeed. If you're on the fence about trying to decide if you want to go to this park or not, let me tell you, it is a very, very good park. Its reviews do give it a 4 to 4.8, which is pretty standard. Yet, in my mind, it's a really nice park, number one. It is so full of history. It is incredible. Really great displays. I promise you, really great stuff. There are a few people around who might be able to give you specific details about the battleship and maybe the submarine and other stuff like the airplanes and all that jazz. But I didn't really get into that much. I focused on the battleship, and all of that I know for a fact is very good. The design of the park, the ease of getting to it, all of that is really well mapped out. So thumbs up on that. Parking's great. There's a small restaurant, but it's extremely expensive. We got a BLT for $15. It was big and it was wonderful. We had to half it actually between the two of us. And I didn't mind overpaying for food and refreshments at the park. Hey, it supports the park. So that is a really good frame of mind that you need to have when you spend a lot of money at these sorts of places. And yes, there are certain cautions when you go to this park. A couple of cautions for viewing the battleship, and probably the same for the submarine. You need to be in at least moderately good health. There can be a lot of walking, and there are very tight compartments like inside the turrets, probably all through the submarine. The ship can be a difficult place for EMS to navigate and extract people due to the narrow halls and corridors and all that jazz. There are plenty of stairs also. While you can stay on the first level and see a lot, you have to take the stairs to really reach the full majority of the battleship, and again, just like the submarine. And you want to be able to be in good health and be able to be mobile to really, really experience this amazing park. It is great. But remember, EMS is going to have a hard time getting to you if you are not in shape and if you're ill prepared. The USS Alabama, the Memorial Park, is located in Mobile, Alabama, specifically Mobile Bay, oriented alongside Interstate Highway 10 and directly off Highway 98. Easy to find. Just hop onto Highway 98 and follow the signs. That's all there is to it. You really can't miss it. Just pull up to the front gate, pay for your parking, and get after it. The park is open daily between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. It will cost $5 at this time to park your automobile, $30 for large vehicles. Admission is basically $18 per person, depending on age and blah, 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 blah. Discounts are possible, so pay attention to that. Last tickets are sold at 4 p.m., but I don't advise getting to the park at 4 p.m. There is a ton to see. Yeah, you can pay $5, go park, and maybe go to the Korean War veteran memorial or something like that. Maybe drive around and just have a good peek. That's cool. But if you really want to see the battleship, submarine, and planes, you need to be there before noon, easily. So get there early, pay for your parking, pay for your admission, and like I said before, get after it. Here again, as part of my theme for you to be sure to really get the most out of this part, what is the best visiting time? Well, you need to get there in the mornings, period. You got to be there by 9 or 10 a.m. if you can, noon at the latest. But being there in the mornings, weekdays, always the best, mainly Tuesday through Thursday, being the least busy days. It ramps up on Fridays, obviously. Saturday is the busiest day of all. To get that greatest volume of enjoyment of this park, you really need to account for spending just on the Battleship 2 hours easy, at least 2 hours. We hovered around for a solid 3 hours, and that was what I mainly wanted to experience. And what I'm primarily focusing on in this video is just the Battleship. I could have easily have spent 4 hours, easily. So I can't tell you how long it might take to go through the other sections of the park because we only did the Battleship. But with all the awesome planes and tanks, artillery, and the USN drum submarine, I could have spent another 2-3 hours there. I mean, I could have spent a full day, easily. So you need to be able to be at the park by noon or 1 at the very latest, just to really blow through this place. Because you're going to be there up to 3 to 5 hours, more than likely. And if you're ADA, anything like that, you really need to plan for this. So please try to get there by at least 10 a.m. Try to get there maybe on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you will really get your greatest amount of enjoyment that way. Quickly, a few other little details that are extremely important. ADA wheelchair, stroller, service animals, those can all restrict your access. So you need to pre-plan and determine if under those circumstances, you're going to be able to hit all the things that you really want to see at the park. Furthermore, you've got to wear comfortable shoes if you're going to be mobile and walking around. So be in good health, have your tennis shoes. If there's any other circumstance for yourself, premeditate, think ahead. This is a whole lot of, walking and climbing type of activities. It would really be nice if you also have the finances to make a donation. And as far as this park is concerned, you might want to check out their website. There, they do have a feature for you to give donations over and beyond either a parking fee, your admission fee, and whatnot. So that would be a great way to help out. Remember how I said there's a lot to look at? Yeah, there's 100 acres at this park. Not that every single little tiny parcel is just crammed full of something to look at. It is expansive. There is a lot to look at. So a lot of history on war, technology, etc. There's a lot to this. For me, I focused on the Battleship. That's what all of this is really going to focus in on in just a minute here. Touring the Battleship is a self-guided tour. You're oriented when you get up on the ship by a gentleman that greets you at the entrance. He will explain the tour map and related markings throughout the ship that you can follow. You can take pictures and linger as long as you want. In the warmer part of the year, summer, my advice is to absolutely see everything that's outside first. Here again, for me, I went straight to the Battleship and I did the whole outside of the Battleship first. That whole first deck, we climbed up all the different levels into the main superstructure. So we went up, so we went out and up. And then we went down below where it was cooler and out of the sun. And speaking of the self-guided tour, if you take your time, you will get an honest feel of the Battleship as it existed in World War II and how 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was a job for the crew. You will begin getting a sense of that. Sleeping and eating with herds of others, a total lack of privacy. As you walk around, you'll quickly see just how literally packed the sailors were. Shoehorned in like sardines. A crew of up to 2,500 extraordinary men. Just keep that sort of thing in mind as you experience the giant ship. On your tour, you will see, of course, kind of common type of displays relative to what everything was about. Kind of an orientation area, the Pacific War, Atlantic War, about the ship and whatnot. A lot of general historical information. And then you really get into the ship. You can go through all the gun turrets, the kitchen, the doctor's quarters, radio room, just lots and lots of different aspects. It's huge, it's vast, it's packed full of history, and you're only seeing kind of a fraction of the ship. Because think, there's engines and boilers and piping and wiring. This ship is really just packed full of stuff. And you get to see a fraction of it. But in my mind, you get to see the very best parts of this ship and a really good feel for what's going on. Walking Its Expanse. The Alabama is a member of the South Dakota class of battleships designed specifically for providing shore bombardment and anti-aircraft defense of aircraft carriers. The ship carries a total of 129 guns. Its profile, obviously, is dominated by the 3 large main turrets with armor 18 inches thick, each carrying 3 16-inch guns that could send a 2,700-pound projectile more than 20 miles with great accuracy. In addition, this ship also bears 10 smaller side turrets that each carry 2 5-inch guns and 12 installation of quad mount 40 millimeter, and originally was fitted with 52 20 millimeter guns, which complemented the anti-aircraft battery during close encounters or with encounters of kamikazes and whatnot. So anyway, pretty interesting stuff. The keel was laid and construction began at the North Fork Naval Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia on February 1st, 1940. More than 3,000 men and women working 24 hours a day for 30 months brought the project to completion 9 months ahead of schedule. The largest ship ever built in Portsmouth. It displaces 35,000 tons without anything in it. When it's fully loaded for action, it weighs 45,000 tons. The ship measures 680 feet long, 180 feet wide, and a little over that, and rises 194 feet from keel to the very top. And that's really equivalent to, at minimum, 13 stories and up to 19 stories, like a skyscraper. It's huge. The Alabama's advanced design of the time enabled it to steam at 28 knots, almost 32 miles per hour. This giant ship was christened on February 16th, 1942, and commissioned into service on August 16th, 1942. There are many guns to look at. The quad 40s plus many of the 20 millimeters, all primarily for anti-aircraft protection. The 5-inch guns and the dual mounts on each side were anti-aircraft and bombardment used. The 16-inch guns were bombardment and maybe some ship-to-ship attack. Let's take a closer look at those big 16-inch guns. Getting into the meat of the USS Alabama, those 9 huge 16-inch guns. Knowing a bit about the massive guns and how they operate is a huge part of the ship's history and makes the visit better, just knowing how they work and what you're looking at. The 16-inch guns are housed in 3 gun mounts, or turrets, numbered from front to back as 1, 2, and 3. I did my speed lunking in the front first turret, or turret number 1. Each 16-inch gun weighs 80 tons and could fire a 2,700-pound shell up to 20.6 miles. The turrets were heavily armored, with the faceplate being 18 inches thick, and were designed with a complex internal system to move, load, and aim the shells and powder charges using hoists and analog computers for targeting. Getting up into the number 1 turret to have a sense of how it all worked, my first impression was that it was cramped, yet cavernous. The initial rear portion of the turret is for the target finders. A couple of guys at minimum would be occupying that space, I presume. The long tube is the optical device for spotting and ranging the targets. The ends of the optical lenses can be seen on the outside of each turret. Passing the rangefinder, you see a lot of tubes, wires, analog computers, and button pads. Much of the devices are related to aiming and fire control in case the turret needs to operate as a separate, independent entity. Larger, more complex versions can be seen in the gun aiming and fire control room deep down inside of the battleship. I then moved over to the far right to more easily view the gun's opening or breech, where the shells and powder are inserted, rammed in, and prepared for firing. I point out the breech. The projectile hoist would be below and to the rear of that, where each shell would emerge from. I point next to the upper powder hoist door, where all 6, 3 at a time, powder casings would be delivered. Then the projectile hoist cradle, which is where the shell and the powder casings would lay and be precisely maneuvered to the opening or breech of the barrel. Lastly, behind the projectile hoist cradle is the ram that would push the shell into the barrel first, then the first 3 bags of powder, and then the second 3 bags of powder. The man at the breech would close off the breech and indicate that the gun was loaded and ready to fire. That's the basic idea inside the very top of the gun turret. Let's go see more views of how the turret works below the decks. The 16-inch gun turrets occupy 5 levels of the ship. Each turret sits on top of a platform called a barbette. The barbette is a huge cylinder of steel which itself sits or rests on the keel of the ship. More than 150 men were required to keep each turret working properly and the guns firing. Gun crews fed shells and bags of powder charges far below the decks up to the top turrets by conveyors and elevators, then loaded into the guns to be fired. The USS Alabama is unique in that the museum has provided visitors access to be able to see much of it all, having cut a huge entryway into the barbette of the number 2 turret, an extremely unique feature of the museum. Within the first couple of levels of the superstructure, you can see the round exterior of the barbettes, like in the dining room area. Getting down to the 3rd level, you will find the entrance into the number 2 turret's barbette. You will quickly notice the 2 circular foundations of this upper projectile ring on the projectile flat station. The shell hoist was used by 3 men for just 1 gun. They manually pulled shells from the center ring by capstans with rotating chains to a hoist that lifted them to the gun deck. There were another 3 men pulling shells from the external ring to that inner ring. We went down 1 more level, I believe level 4, to view the powder handling room. Each shell required 6 90-pound bags of powder, totaling 540 pounds per shot. This is the base of the barbette. Powder charges would be delivered to the room through the drops in the exterior wall. 3 charge bags would be placed on a hoist, 1 hoist per gun and sent up and then loaded onto another hoist into the turret. A very little bit about aiming or fire control. Aiming was 100% visual prior to the fire control radar systems. Now, let's look back inside turret number 1. There may have been at least 2 or 3 guys operating the optical rangefinder for the 16-inch turrets. The turret-based rangefinder was secondary, a form of redundancy to the larger and more precise fire control system located inside the superstructure. The turret system simply ensured that each turret could still contribute to firing at a target if the primary systems in the superstructure were damaged or unavailable. While the ship had search radar from the start, it wasn't until 1943 it received fire control radar for the main battery. These next pictures show you the radar antennas perched on top of the gun director stations. Now, here are the exterior fire control radars and directors located on the battleship. The radars and rangefinders gave the directors targeting information to send below to the crew in the plotting room, which in turn would control the turrets for both aiming and firing. Now for inside the superstructure. There were 2 big rooms crammed full of equipment. Look at the tons of computers, wiring relays, wires, dials, and stuff. These 2 rooms are the gun battery plotting rooms. This is where targeting data is fed from the spotters high up outside and inside the turrets, then later by way of the radars. Spotters and radars fed coordinates and corrections into the many analog computers, and precise gun maneuvering was done here for aiming. It is also where the guns could be fired the most, fastest, quickest way possible. Here I'm just simply giving you an eye behind the wall of switches and dials. Just look at all the wiring that is involved. Then I headed back to the first room and looked around a bit more at the computers and wiring. The 5-inch guns in those dual 5-inch gun turrets were multi-purpose, bombardment and anti-aircraft. Moving through them is also very cramped. With the exception of the aiming system, these are sort of small versions of the 16-inch guns. Inside the 2-inch protective armor protecting the crew from weather and gunfire, I am guessing there were up to about 7 people inside of these 5-inch turrets. Couple around the guns inserting shells and powder bags, then a couple up front controlling the turret, and on each side using the optical target and range finding system. Remember, all target and fire control can be done from below decks, where we saw the huge analog computers and stuff, or they can be done inside the turrets. At each gun, you can see where the shells and powder came up to the gunners. When you go below about 2 or 3 levels, you will see where the shells and powder are sent up to the turret's handling room via these elevators. Here's one of the rooms used to store explosives. Men would take explosives from the storage rooms, send them up the elevators to the handling room, then from the handling room to the turret. Finally, and super quick, in talking about guns on the ship, there are or were 48 of the smaller 40mm guns in 12 quadruple mounts, and 56 20mm guns. 56, that is a lot. All of these 40mm and 20mm guns were primarily used against aircraft. Control rooms. Yeah, there were several rooms all over the place used to control this big giant ship. Rooms involved with steering and plotting their course. I begin with the navigation bridge, comprising of several sub-bridges or divisions. Navigation, battle, pilot, chart house, etc. The navigation bridge is at the top front of the superstructure. At the very front of the navigation bridge is the navigation bridge itself. It is fully glassed in, a heck of a place to be and see the sights, but it is not well protected in times of battle. Just behind the navigation bridge is the conning station or battle bridge. Here the walls are 16 inches thick. You will see steering and other related controls and gauges tightly packed into that battle bridge and periscopes that aid in complete and safe visibility. Then there is the chart room or chart house. It had the detailed maps and charts of the world's waterways, along with the plotting of the ship's heading. We did go one more level up, as far up as we could go. You can look out over the top of the entire navigation bridge. There was another navigation or steering room there. I didn't take the time to investigate too much though. I was just having fun. Related to the navigation bridge are rooms below deck that also contribute to navigation, such as the central station. During battles, the captain was up in the battle bridge while the executive officer was in the central station. This had steering stations and gyro compasses providing all other stations throughout the ship, such as the plotting and aiming room, with a stable base and information for navigation and gunnery. This is one of the 4 rooms that could steer the ship. Rooms nearby the central station were the Combat Information Center. The XO worked a lot in this room during battles. Also nearby is the Damage Control Room and the Radio Room. Communications between the Battle Bridge, Combat Information System, Secondary Con, Main Communications, Flag Plot, Damage Control, Air Defense, and Engine Rooms were interconnected a couple of levels below deck in the Intercom Room. As part of Damage Control, the ship had several flooding stations. These stations were used to maintain the ship's balance and to flood rooms that had caught fire. Fires could be a constant threat. Firefighting was part of damage control. This was one of many fire control stations throughout the ship. Each area would have much the same gear, while specific areas would have tools and supplies really geared for their specific areas. If repairs outside of the ship were required, they could handle that too, up to a point. This was the diving exhibit. Engineer's office. In the engineer's office, they kept the ship itself operational in order to move. Here, officers did their paperwork and calculations for auxiliary, electrical, and propulsion divisions. Made sure the ship could get from point A to point B. Very close to the battle-oriented rooms is one of the 4 engine rooms or machinery rooms. Giant engines propelled the USS Alabama. You only get to see a fraction of the huge amount of piping, boilers, and steam turbines. A boiler would produce heat in the form of steam, like an old steam engine. That steam power would turn steam turbines and the electric generators for the ship. The steam turned a turbine that was connected to reducing gears that were again connected to the propeller shafts. The engines produced 130,000 shaft horsepower. Support rooms. Well, there is so much more to this floating city. Repair work and ongoing maintenance of the ship had to be done constantly. The people crewing these rooms were well skilled at the crafts of woodworking, metal fabrication, and generalized construction and electrical work, as important as any other job on the battleship, vital to the health and care of this magnificent beast. Living conditions. One thing my wife asked me as we boarded the ship was how many men were on the ship and where did they sleep? With a crew of up to 2,500, the ship had to be managed very carefully to accommodate everybody's needs. Saying that there was limited personal space is a huge understatement. Sleeping was handled with multi-tiered bunks within shared sleeping quarters. That's kind of basically it. One of the places that the crew slept was in the galley. I point out poles from the ceiling where the hammocks were hung for many. Only specialized groups had their own specialized bunking areas. Eating was in the galley or the large mess hall. The crew was fed 3 meals a day when possible. Be sure to read the placard about this area. It has really neat information on it. You will see the bakery bread making area that ran 24/7. And they did have some desserts as well. There's a ship store, very well stocked. It's kind of like the department store for the crew to get some goodies, snacks, smokes, and such. Health-wise, you have the doctor's room, operating room, bacteriological lab, infirmary, dentist, etc., etc. That is pretty much all I have as far as living conditions. There's a lot more to it. But let's move on to the memorial rooms. There's the Evans room. I suggest you look at that. That's a destroyer that they are memorializing. There is, of course, the USS Alabama and the crew's memorial room. That is very nice as well. So really neat, interesting tidbits in those rooms for sure. When you arrive at the park, you cannot help but see all the planes. A huge B-52 and other large military aircraft near the battleship. Well, the battleship actually makes them look quite tiny. But they are really fascinating to look at. You also will immediately begin seeing a lot of the armor, the tanks, and the artillery. And of course, you'll see the submarine. That's the USN Drum submarine. This unique military history park and museum memorializes the bravery and sacrifice of the men and women who served in World War II and more recent wars and events. The park is dedicated to all Alabama citizens who have worn the uniform of all branches of the United States Armed Forces. It is certainly one of America's most unique military attractions. You really need to put it on your list of things to do. You will spend many hours of awestruck moments on your self-guided tour of the USS Alabama, the USN Drum submarine, the amazing aircraft, tanks, and artillery, a 100-acre park extravaganza. Get energized because there is so much to explore. Now, with that, please relax, take it easy, be a motoring fanatic on your road odyssey, and I will see you later. Bye.